You know, if you just glance at the headlines, you might think the whole situation between the US and Iran is finally starting to cool down. But what if I told you that's not the real story? What if what we're seeing isn't a de-escalation at all, but actually the calm before a much bigger storm?
Right. That's the core assessment we're digging into. The war has not ended. It just completely flips the script on the whole idea that things are winding down. It suggests everything we've seen so far, yeah, that was just the opening act.
So that's the big question we're tackling here. If it's not over, then what exactly is happening behind the scenes? We're going to peel back the layers of official statements and news reports to get to what's really going on, strategically, a reality that is completely reshaping the entire region.
Okay, first things first, we have to talk about a massive, and I mean massive, shift in the US military's posture. A lot of people are seeing these images of military hardware on the move and thinking, a withdrawal. But that is not what's happening at all.
This is all about repositioning, and the distinction here is absolutely critical. This isn't about packing up and going home. Nope. This is about moving your pieces on the chessboard to get a better angle of attack for a very different kind of fight, one with a lot more firepower and a much, much broader reach.
And look, this isn't just some theory. We've got the receipts. Satellite photos clearly show that dozens of C-130s and crucial refueling tankers have, well, basically vanished from key bases. This isn't just a symbolic move. That's a huge operational and logistical shift on the ground.
So where'd they go? Well, these assets are being moved out of places like Saudi Arabia and into these remote but incredibly important spots like Diego Garcia in the Indian Ocean. And why there? Because from a place like that, the US can launch long-range operations with way fewer political strings attached. And believe me, those strings are a much bigger deal than you might think.
You see, this whole military shuffle isn't happening in a vacuum. It's actually a direct response to a massive diplomatic problem that has popped up for the United States. And this right here? This is a total game changer. A key U.S. ally, Saudi Arabia, has drawn a very clear line in the sand. They're basically saying, our soil is not a launch pad for a war with Iran. They view those bases as defensive for regional stability, not for starting a new conflict. And it's not just the Saudis. We're talking about a whole list of regional powers who have reportedly said no thanks to letting their territory or their airspace be used for an attack on Iran. This collective no, well, that creates a huge strategic headache for U.S. war planners.
And make no mistake, this is way more than a minor inconvenience. It fundamentally changes the entire power dynamic. When major allies can just look at a superpower and say no, it forces that superpower to completely rip up its plans and start over. This is the diplomatic reality that's forcing the military repositioning we're seeing.
But let's talk about the other side of the coin, Iran itself. There's this common myth out there that all the external pressure and sanctions have left the country super fragile, ready to collapse at any moment. The reality on the ground, though, it tells a very different story.
The expectation from a lot of folks in the West was pretty simple. Squeeze the economy, fuel internal unrest, and the whole system would just crumble from the inside out. That widespread protests would basically do the heavy lifting for them.
But that collapse? It never happened. In fact, reports suggest the opposite. Iranian security services have not only consolidated control, but they've also scored a major victory by dismantling extensive intelligence networks that were operating inside the country with foreign links.
And I really can't overstate how big a deal this is. Look, you can lose satellite coverage for a day, that's one thing. But losing human intelligence networks, spies on the ground that took years, maybe decades to build, that is an absolute disaster. For foreign agencies, allegedly including Israel's, losing those networks means their entire playbook might be useless now.
So, far from being on the ropes, Iran is holding some pretty strong cards. We're talking about a military that's been hardened by decades of conflict, a strong network of regional allies, a resolve that hasn't cracked under pressure, and of course, missile capabilities that have proven they can hit their targets. That changes the whole game.
So, let's put all these pieces together. You've got the US military moving its assets for a totally different kind of war. You have diplomatic roadblocks limiting its options. And on the other side, you have an adversary that's proven to be way more resilient and capable than many expected. This is the setup for a new and frankly much more dangerous phase of this confrontation.
Right now, the U.S. seems to have three main goals. First, protect its own forces in the region, that's obvious. Second, shield its key ally, Israel, from what would be an inevitable and powerful retaliation. And third, if a fight does kick off, end it, and end it fast, on their terms.
And this is why we're seeing this massive buildup of power fire. Aircraft carriers, B-52 bombers, squadrons of fighter jets. This isn't de-escalation. This is what it looks like when you're getting ready to achieve those three objectives. It's the logistics you need for a potential high-intensity, sustained fight.
In the end, it all boils down to this simple idea. Power matters. If Iran hadn't been able to show that it could project real force and retaliate in a meaningful way, this whole thing might have already blown up. It's Iran's demonstrated strength, its power, that's forcing its adversaries to hit pause, to reposition, and to really think about the immense costs of an all-out war.
So no, this isn't the end of a conflict. It's the beginning of a new, incredibly high-stakes strategic game. It's a game of positioning, of leverage, of raw power, and the consequences could reshape the entire global order. The only question left is, what's the next move?